this question is an example of an argument part question. It's pretty tough. Argument part questions are sort of a higher level than, say, question 10, the main point question that we just did. This question, you see, it says the reference to the complaint of several centuries ago, blah 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 blah. Right? This reference. So this thing here, which is part of the stimulus, what role does it play in the argument? So we have to describe what role it plays. So it's a very high level activity that we're doing. We have to understand what the argument is saying, yet we also have to understand the relationship between this statement here to the rest of the argument so we can describe it in abstract language. Is it evidence which supports a claim? Is it an illustration of a general hypothesis? Is it an example of blah blah blah, whatever. So let's read the stimulus. It is now a common complaint that the electronic media, so things like the internet, videos, have corroded intellectual skills required and fostered by literary media, so say books. Right? And now people commonly complain, oh, internet is ruining our brains. But, so that renders from our grammar lessons, we know this is all context, renders this context, our argument begins right here. But several centuries ago, the complaint was that certain intellectual skills, such as a powerful memory, extemporaneous eloquence, that were intrinsic to oral culture. So several centuries ago, our culture was not even literary, it was oral. Nothing was really written down, it was all passed down orally. So because that's what our culture was, it was an oral culture, we had things like powerful memory and extemporaneous eloquence. These things, several centuries ago, the complaint was that these things were being destroyed by the spread of literacy. Okay, so here's the premise. So, conclusion. So what awaits us is probably a mere alteration of the human mind rather than its de-evolution. So the statement here, the complaint that several centuries ago, powerful. So that's this part. Actually, I should use a different color to. Here we go. Right, it's being destroyed. This statement. All right, that's this statement here. So they're asking us. You should always do this, by the way, for the argument part questions. You should always just bracket so you know what you're talking about. Well, we know what this is. Premise. This is premise. If there were an answer choice that was as easy as saying, answer choice A, premise, period. Great, choose it, move on. But, of course, they're not going to make it that easy. They're going to say premise and then start talking about the premise and start talking about other stuff. Anywhere along the way they could go wrong. So let's see. A says it's evidence. Yes, very good. It is evidence, premise. Yeah. Supporting the claim that intellectual skills. Now it has to make sure it's right. If it's going to say it's supporting the claim, we have to make sure then this claim, which it starts to describe what this claim is. Right? What this claim is. Well, we know what claim it's supporting. It's supporting this claim. It's supporting our conclusion. Right? You see, the support goes down this way. So they better get this description right. So it's supporting the claim that the intellectual skills fostered by literary media are being destroyed by but that's not, no. That's some claim that they brought in from somewhere up top, right? Very tricky, but you see how it's not right? They have such a, I imagine the LSAT writer having such a fun time making up these wrong answer choices. They just start off right and then just start talking nonsense. But it's not complete nonsense. It's not like the claim that aliens have arrived on Earth and whatever. No, they don't say that. They take stuff that you already read, but just some like this stuff, and they throw it in there. So it seems relevant, but it's actually entirely irrelevant. Right? This is a hard thing to do, to tell what seems relevant versus what actually is relevant. B says, an illustration of the general hypothesis. Is it illustrating a general hypothesis? Okay, well, let's see. I don't remember a general hypothesis being presented. Right? Of the general hypothesis being advanced that, let's see, is this a general hypothesis? Intellectual capabilities are inseparable from the means by which people communicate. I don't remember reading that. I don't remember reading that anywhere in here. Where does it say intellectual abilities are inseparable, are completely glued and tied to the means by which we communicate? I mean, this might be a true statement. It might be true that factually, empirically, the way that people communicate, the way that you and I communicate, that is highly determinative of our intellectual abilities, but that's not anywhere in here. That's like in our world. That's not in this thing. So it certainly cannot illustrate something that's not even present in the stimulus. That's what makes B wrong. C says it's an example. Okay, example is not bad. That is an example you're talking about. Something that happened in the past of a cultural change. Right? That's what it is. It's a cultural change from oral to literary culture, from an oral culture to a literary culture. And it's an example of a cultural change that did not necessarily have a detrimental effect on the human mind overall. Right. So the complaint was that it's detrimental, but was it? I mean, wasn't it great that we switched over from oral to like seriously? Who's going to argue that like oral culture, is better? I mean, I shouldn't have phrased it like that. You will find people to argue every position, no matter how weird or absurd. But it was a rhetorical question. What I meant to say was, of course, literary culture is better than oral culture. Of course, we prefer this to that. right? So even though this is changing, right, you see, so what awaits us is mere alteration, just like how it happened a couple hundred years ago when we transitioned from oral to literal. There was a change of our human mind. Yes, sure, we maybe lost some powerful memory. Sure, maybe we lost extemporaneous eloquence, but we gained other things, right? You see, so it's just a mere alteration, not a de-evolution. So this is great. That did not necessarily have a detrimental effect on the human mind. So okay, you might not be totally convinced. So what we can do is we can put a tilde right here and this is the way how you actually should be processing this. And when I first did this question, I didn't just go C is right. I put a tilde next to C because I thought it sounds kind of right. It sounds pretty good. At least nothing blatantly wrong with it. Like A has something blatantly wrong, B has something blatantly wrong. This is something you have to juggle all the time when you're deciding between answer choices. Get rid of the ones that are wrong for sure, and then evaluate between the couple that are left. So D says evidence that the claim. So it's evidence that the claim that intellectual skills required and fostered by literary media are being lost is unwarranted. But that's not. Wait, that doesn't. So okay, so here's a claim: intellectual skills required and fostered by literary media, whatever those skills are, right? Let's not confuse them with powerful memory and extemporaneous eloquence. Those are skills of the oral culture. So they didn't say what skills we have as a result of our media, or rather, literary media. So, but answer choice D is saying whatever those skills are that a reading society, right, reading books society, whatever intellectual skills that come along with that this is supposed to be evidence that those skills are not actually being lost. But I don't see how that's evidence. But this is talking about something that was lost, right? The complaints of century, powerful memory, extemporaneous eloquence of the oral culture. That was being destroyed by the spread of literacy. So see, it's not that it's not being lost; it's that it's okay that it's being lost. Sure, we're losing it, but look, a couple hundred years ago we lost these things, and we're still fine for it. It's just a mere alteration for human mind. Don't think of it as a devolution. That's what this statement is doing. So D is an incredibly tricky answer choice, right? But you see, I mean, I hope you can see that it actually is being lost. This is the claim that it's being lost is not unwarranted at all. And this statement doesn't try to make it unwarranted. It concedes that it is being lost, but so what? But it's being lost is fine. It's not bad. It's just an alteration. E says it's possible evidence mentioned and then dismissed. No, this is not dismissed. Where do we dismiss that this thing was yes, it was a complaint that this happened. We don't dismiss it later. Possible evidence that might be cited by supporters of the hypothesis being, whatever. Now they're just inviting you to think really hard about this and waste all your time. So it's the faster, right? So the faster you can eliminate the answer choice on site where it goes wrong, the better it is. You don't have to consider the rest of this. Instead, you can spend your time and move on to the next question.